Hey, Off-Season After Dark fans. Welcome here to the first solo episode I've ever done before. I've always had at least one or two guests on the other episodes we've done, but here I decided to do one solo to try it out and focus on the transfer portal. We are actually in off-season mode right now. So we're going to focus on the portal opening up, specifically the quarterbacks. Today, we've seen some big names go in there. We won't get too much into running backs, receivers. We had a big receiver addition in Jace Brown from K-State today, but we're going to look at quarterbacks that are in, where they might go, how the team needs and coaching carousel might affect some of that. Look specifically at some of the SEC teams that might need a QB, then look at the rest of the Power 4 conference, G5, and a couple of the FCS quarterbacks who are of note that have entered the portal that we know so far. So in looking at guys who have entered the portal so far, I'm going to show you a graphic here. This is not exhaustive, so we know that Sam Levitt is going to enter the portal. He will be one of the three biggest names on the list when he does. Varying sites have said he's already in the portal. Some have not. I am using this graphic from 247. They do not list him officially in the portal yet. That is why he's not on this graphic. But it's going to happen. Another big name we will have within the last hour, it has been reported that he entered the portal, is Drew Mestemaker from North Texas. So in looking at this list here, we'll start right at the top. We have Brendan Sorsby, who was on a resurgent Cincinnati team this year. They kind of came out of nowhere. We expected they would be one of the worst Big 12 teams. And it turns out they, although finishing the season poorly, were pretty frisky. And Scott Satterfield had a way better season than we expected them to at 7-5. So Sorsby will be a massive loss. He is a guy who is equally adept at throwing and rushing the ball. Will be a big loss for them. In terms of teams where we could see Sorsby pop up, he started his college career at Indiana. It wouldn't shock me if he would go back there. He 2 years there. Of course, he was there the 2 years before Curt Cignetti got there. He does fit that Cignetti style, though. Sorsby does. Another, place where he could end up. There's two that I think would be reasonable. We will get to DJ Lagway down the list more later, but with Florida having an opening at QB now, Sorsby might fit for the Gators, especially we have to think about offenses. The new O coordinator for the Gators is going to be Buster Faulkner, who was at Georgia Tech the last couple of years. We saw what he did with Haynes King and having a running QB. Sorsby would be a good fit there. So I think Indiana, Florida, and then we're pretty sure Texas Tech is going to be in the market for a marquee quarterback. Sorsby could be that guy for them. He'll be right near the top. The guy I'm going to talk about next after Sorsby is going to be Sam Levitt, who many of you know about. Arizona State, made the playoffs last year, and Levitt has basically openly said that he is treating this like free agency. He is going to basically go to the highest bidder, heavily weigh how much he will be compensated in NIL. So honestly, no problem with that. And if you're going to do that, that's up to you. And I kind of applaud him for actually saying it, to just being open that these are the reasons I'm looking, where I am. Levitt will, down the road, I think, be a high NFL pick. He has the tools they will look for. He has the measurables at 6'2", 6'3", over 200 pounds. There's a lot of upside there. Had he had a really good year this year and stayed healthy, he probably would have went in the draft. That didn't happen. He's going back in college, but going to the portal. A couple schools where we are hearing that will be major players for him are Oregon, if Dante Moore goes into the draft, which could happen. Indiana, as we've mentioned, with Sorsby. Miami, we're pretty much in the world now where Mario Cristobal is going to play the roulette wheel with the portal every year on a quarterback, and that's fine. They've been good at identifying a Cam Ward. Carson Beck has them in the playoffs this year. So that has been the way Miami's doing it. And LSU is another one for Levitt. I think for Lane Kiffin, you need to get a QB in the portal, and it will likely be either Levitt or DJ Lagway. I would be surprised if LSU does not end up with one of those two guys. That's a great segue to DJ Lagway, who obviously could be in play at LSU. He's supremely talented, a lot of maybe more upside than anybody on this list. Heck of a player. Of course, they were up and down on offense this year at Florida, but just couldn't get it done. Apparently him and John Summerall met recently, and that meeting went less than ideal. The rumor is that Summerall, questioned his attitude, toughness. We don't know the specifics yet. More of that may come out later, but those are just some of the preliminary rumors. So Lagway's in the portal. Obviously, the aforementioned LSU is a possibility. We're also hearing some of the schools in his home state of Texas could be. Baylor and Texas Tech. The Baylor one surprised me. They do need a QB. Sawyer Robertson has exhausted his eligibility. Dave Aranda may need to spend money on a QB because he is firmly on the hot seat going into next year. I'm honestly surprised he didn't keep his job, or that he did keep his job this year. But Baylor will be going after a QB. Texas Tech's another one. They're going to throw money at somebody. They'll get somebody good. Remember, Lagway is a Texas native, so that wouldn't shock me if he does end up there. But again, I think Levitt or Lagway ends up at LSU. The other one, Miami, could also be an option for Lagway, so Miami will be an option for both of those two as well, which makes a lot of sense. Dylan Raiola is listed at number 2 on this list. He obviously much ballyhooed recruit. Relatives have played in the NFL. He went to 4 high schools in 4 years, will now be at his second college in 3 years. His uncle was the O-line coach for the Huskers, who was recently fired. I think the writing was on the wall then that he was probably going to bolt. He will not be at Nebraska now. And the early rumors were that he may be at Texas Tech as well. Sounds like that's not going to happen. One rumor we are hearing for Raiola could be Louisville. Jeff Brom has done a very good job since he's been there, as he did at Purdue and Western Kentucky. He is seen as a quarterback guy, which would have to be appealing to Raiola as he certainly tries to plan for his future at the professional level. I think if Miami swings and misses on both Levitt and Lagway, Raiola could end up at Miami. He also, I think, will be in the mix at Oregon if Dante Moore leaves. I think he would be, for that offense, a pretty good fit there. So those are going to be some places to look at for Dylan Raiola. That's the one. He's a big name, but we know the least about his potential schools at this point. It seems like it's pretty wide open. Him and his camp are probably certainly talking to people under the radar. Not a lot has gotten out, though. After these guys, we'll get into some of the lesser-known guys, but still certainly good pickups. Kenny Minchie is next on this list. Notre Dame, who backed up C.J. Carr this year. He's originally a Tennessee native. And I think some schools to look at for him will be Virginia and Michigan State. The next guy on the list, Aiden Childs, was at Michigan State this year, but Kenny Minchie could be a guy that fits in a Pat Fitzgerald offense that they're going to, the new coach at Michigan State, what they're going to do there. And Virginia, resurgent this year, great season under Tony Elliott. Chandler Morris is almost certainly gone, so they'll be looking at it for a QB. They were a team that offered and Minchie when he was in high school, and he did look at Virginia as a recruit then. So Minchie's a guy, we haven't seen him play a lot of college football because he lost that starting job, but he will be a player, and he will start at a P4 school next year. He's not going to go somewhere, I don't think, where he's not going to be the guy. That may not be a blue blood. Certainly the schools I mentioned to look at, Michigan State, Virginia, wouldn't qualify as there, but he'll be all right. He also could be a guy that potentially would fill the Raiola void and could go to Nebraska with the opening there. Aiden Childs is next. He's an interesting one. Aiden Childs had been at Oregon State, followed Jonathan Smith. Things didn't go right there in the 2 years there. Childs never developed. He was very disappointed in his 2 years there. Part of that is what got Jonathan Smith fired, in being blunt. But Childs has a lot of tools. He can throw the ball a mile. That arm is lively. He has an NFL caliber arm if he can put things together. And despite the negatives we saw from him the last couple of years, I think a decent sized school offers Childs. I think he will be playing college football next year at a pretty good school. And under the radar team that I think he could be a fit for, some of this, the fans wouldn't like this. They would look at his last couple of years as being disappointing. I think Tennessee could be an option for Childs. He is going to be that guy who, if you have one-on-one deep shots, he's a very good fit for that system. That's what Josh Heupel does better than anybody up the seam. So you get Childs moving around, you make it so he basically can pre-snap decide which half of the field he's going to look at and target, and then you let him wing it and make a decision. That's not a bad fit for Childs. So I think Tennessee would be a decent fit for him in that system. He also potentially could be a Baylor one if they don't get Lagway or some of the other guys we are talking about. But we don't really know if Childs wants to go back out west, if the geography will play a part in that decision. Tough to tell at this point for him. So we don't know. The guy I'll talk about before Colton Joseph is Drew Mestemaker, who, as I had mentioned, just recently has went in the portal today. A lot of you know his story. He was at North Texas, came in, had not started a game at quarterback since he was a freshman in high school, walked on, won the job this year, and all they did was have the best offense in the country. So Eric Morris, his head coach, has since taken the head job at Oklahoma State. We are hearing today, again, in talking about the connectedness with the coaches. Most of us assume that their O coordinator, Jordan Davis, would follow Morris to Oklahoma State. That may not happen anymore. He may take the O coordinator job at East Carolina, where in the last couple days, their old O coordinator, John David Baker, has taken the O coordinator job at Ole Miss. So I don't think Mestemaker goes to ECU. I think he's played himself at a higher level than that. The obvious one for him is following Eric Morris to Oklahoma State. It makes all the sense in the world. He's the logical guy to stay in that Morris offense in the air raid and wing it around. So I think looking for Mestemaker at Oklahoma State is the right and logical move, but he's a guy that will have options. I think he could be a guy who, if Oregon doesn't get Raiola, Levitt, some of their top choices, Mestemaker could be in play there. But I think the Cowboys there will have the right of first refusal, so to speak, on him. Next, we get into Colton Joseph, our first G5 guy on the list, and he's a very good one. Joseph, a California native, has been at Old Dominion the last couple of years and is very impressive. 6'2", 200 pounds. He'll have 2 years left to play. He was the Sun Belt Conference Offensive Player of the Year this year. He very good rusher and thrower. So he threw for 2,600 yards, 21 touchdowns this year. He also ran for over 1,000 yards and had double-digit touchdowns. I believe it was 13 rushing touchdowns. So we're very good at both. A team who wants a dual threat QB. He is one of the best in the country at any level. He will be starting for a good team next year. One place, and I haven't heard this anywhere, I would like to see him potentially at the University of Iowa next year. He would be a logical replacement for Mark Gronowski. The way they move the QB around, use him in the run game, he would make a lot of sense there. He also, if he wants to stay in the state of Virginia, maybe UVA will be one in replacing Chandler Morris. Clemson is also going to need a quarterback. Joseph or Jaden Craig, who we'll get to next, are some guys we've potentially heard that could be in the mix for that one. But Colton Joseph is a very good player. He also could be one at Indiana. I think he would fit the offense that Kurt Signetti is running quite well. So that's where we're at with Colton Joseph. Heck of a player. For those of you that haven't watched him, you should try to get the highlights and see what he's been doing. I don't think you will be disappointed. He's a fun player to watch. Jaden Craig, we see next on the list, at Harvard of all places this last year. An NFL-sized body, as you can see there, 6'3", 230 pounds, cannon for an arm, moves pretty well. Clemson is one we've seen mentioned for him. And another one that we're hearing for Jaden Craig is the University of Kentucky, with Will Stein now moving to Kentucky as the head coach from Oregon. They will need a quarterback. So Craig is a guy who will end up at a decent P4 school starting. The NFL scouts like him because of his body size, because of his arm strength. A lot of people thought he would go in the draft this year. He is not. And I think smart for him, he's going to stay another year in college and go to a bigger school to prepare himself further for that. But Jaden Craig will end up at somewhere good. Again, at Harvard this past year. The next guy we see on this list is one I don't know what to make. Taven Jackson. He has been at 3 colleges so far. He started at Tennessee. He spent 2 years at Indiana. This last year was at UCF. He has never started more than half of the games in any season. He offers very little in the run game. 6'4", 215 pounds. He looks like the player. He looks the part. That hasn't translated to on the field success yet, but because of his pedigree, what we've seen, I think he'll start at a decent school next year. It may be a G5 school. I don't know. That would be my guess. But Taven Jackson's good enough to take a flyer on and look at, where he may end up. So that'll be one to look at. Other guys on this list that we haven't talked about, we've hit most of the big ones. Caden Hauser at ECU, who we mentioned ECU before. Hauser started his career at Michigan State, was with the Pirates this year, had a very good season. Honestly, if I was him, I may have stayed there. That was a pretty good situation. I get your O coordinators leaving, but that receiving core, very, very good. But Caden Hauser is another guy who's going to try his luck in the portal. A Southern California guy. UCLA does, we're going to see what happens with Nico. It wouldn't shock me if Nico ends up at a better situation than UCLA. You know, he went in the portal late last year, and it started poorly for them. Deshaun Foster got fired. But then when Jerry Neuheisel was calling plays, Nico turned into a good player. So wouldn't shock me if we see Nico end up somewhere else, and UCLA might have something to do out there. So we'll see what happens. Some other guys we have, Marcus Stokes is an interesting one. He's not even FCS. He's a D2 guy who was at West Florida. He had been a high recruit before, had a significant amount of controversy when he was a recruit with being recorded saying some very inappropriate things that may or may not have been taken out of context. But he's another guy, 6'3", 215, looks the part, has a heck of an arm. And I believe he was at West Florida this year. I said that. I believe that's where Austin Reed was from before he went to Western Kentucky. So Stokes is a guy that's probably played himself up to, a higher level. I think someone will take a chance on him. Isaac Wilson, back up at Utah this year, is another guy we'll talk about, younger brother of Zach Wilson. He's entered the portal, probably will end up at a G5 school, but he's a guy to look for as someone who may start somewhere else. Another guy who has started a few games in his college career that's going to be in the portal, Nico Marchial, who was at West Virginia this year with Rich Rod. He has entered the portal. I'm a little surprised that one didn't work out. They had gotten Henderson in the portal, but Nico was a decent fit there. Ran around decently well. I assume he will probably end up at a G5 school where he can use his feet as well as his arm, and that's I think what will happen with him. A guy who played well the last couple of years and has played a lot of football, but struggled this year and lost his job, Braden Fowler-Nicolosi at Colorado State. We had seen when he had Horton and some of those tight ends, he had a very good supporting cast and targets at times. Then this year, it all kind of went wrong for Colorado State, and Jay Norvell was fired. But Fowler-Nicolosi will be in the portal. We'll see where he ends up. That'll be an interesting one. Another one, in our FCS D2 guys, Marcus Smith was a very good player, under the radar guy, but he was at Chowan University this year. Another big-bodied guy, 6'3", 220, throws the ball well. He has already committed to the University of Illinois. So that was a good early pick by Bielema, knowing they have to replace Luke Altmaier. And Maurice Smith is that gentleman's name from Chowan. So he'll be one to look at. We have seen both Appalachian State QBs, J.J. Cole and A.J. Swan, enter the portal. Those are, for those two, that will mean App State will almost certainly have to go in the portal and get a QB. Dylan Lonergan is another interesting one I wanted to talk about at Boston College, formerly at Alabama. He looked like a world beater early in the year. He was throwing lasers, looked great, dicing up defenses. Then the wheels fell off, and he lost his job eventually. I think someone decent still takes a flyer on Lonergan, though, because, of the pedigree. He was a high recruit. Someone will think they can get the best out of him. So that's what I think happens there. And Lonergan will be one who we'll have to watch him at the very least. In the SEC, we've talked a little bit about LSU is going to go after a QB. We're almost certain of that. The Gators will have to, now that DJ Legway is done. Texas won't have to. South Carolina won't have to. Ole Miss won't have to. Taylon Green does have a year of eligibility left. I think he'll stay at Arkansas, maybe not with the new coaching staff. So Arkansas will be a wait and see. Tennessee has a couple good high recruits on the roster, but with Aguilar leaving, maybe Tennessee will have to go in the portal for one. I'd mentioned Childs there as an option. Kentucky, I think Cutter Boley, they'll probably roll with him, but with the new head coach, there have been rumors that they will go in the portal and get a guy. Craig was the guy that I had mentioned before. Mississippi State will be good. Kamario Taylor's going to be the guy. He looked fantastic. Auburn will almost certainly go after a portal guy with Alex Golish coming in, and Byron Brown, his multi-year starter at USF, is not playing in USF's bowl game. It would make all the sense in the world if he follows Golish to Auburn. I think Sorsby would be another guy that would fit that offense pretty well if he would be a guy that Golish would look at. Oklahoma will not. Mateer will be back. Alabama's an interesting one because Simpson probably goes in the draft. And do we trust Keelan Russell or Austin Mack to be a guy? Or does Kalen DeBoer want an experienced guy? Considering he recruited both of those two, I have a feeling he might let them battle it out. But with the pressure to win there, nothing would surprise me too much. Vanderbilt is the last SEC team that I'll touch on here. We know Jared Curtis flipped and is signed with Vandy. He's their biggest recruit ever. I'm still not sure they don't target a quarterback in the portal. Probably not one of the elite ones, but a guy who could come in, challenge Jared Curtis, and be a serviceable backup if he doesn't win the job. If you're Vandy or anybody, you're not going to be a national contender with a true freshman quarterback. No team's ever, or it's been few and far between where we have had freshman QBs win on the national stage. It's been almost 40 years since one has won the national title. That goes back to Jamel Holloway at Oklahoma in the mid-'80s. Trevor Lawrence played a little bit for Clemson when they did it, but he was not the starter the entire year. But if I'm Vandy in the SEC, I bring in a guy to at least push Curtis and challenge him. Everybody's talking about him being the guy. I'm not sold that he will be the guy from day one yet at Vandy. It's too much to ask if we expect him to do that. Now, looking at some of the other, massive teams, in the Power Four, Michigan is one. We don't know is Underwood going to transfer? What's going to happen there? We don't know. Penn State with Matt Campbell, what are they going to do? Who are they going to go after? That might be another Sorsby fit if they need a guy. So some of those teams will be interesting to look at. Michigan State is one with Fitzgerald. I think it's almost certain that they get a portal QB. Illinois, we said, has already signed Maurice Smith. So Iowa will go after one. I had mentioned Colton Joseph as a guy there. And Maryland got some good news. And then it sounds like Malik Washington is going to stay at Maryland and forgo entering the portal. That's big for them. Indiana will almost certainly enter the portal for a QB. I don't expect Albert Mendoza to be the guy there next year. Oregon is the interesting one and a wild card because if Dante Moore comes back, they will not go after a quarterback. But if Moore leaves, they will go after one in the portal. And they will be one of the big spenders. They will get one of the elite QBs in the portal if they, in fact, target one. USC probably won't. Maeva will be back. We expect him to be the guy there. And so, Lincoln Riley, doubt they'll be going after one. Elsewhere in the Power Four, we've talked about Texas Tech and Baylor, both teams that we expect to go after QBs in the portal. Arizona State will as well. With Sam Leavitt leaving, Kenny Dillingham has already, alluded to they have a guy in their sights who they might want to go after. Maybe it's Dylan Raiola. He spent some time in Phoenix or that area during high school, so we'll see. But Dillingham has been a very good coach so far, and he's done well with Levitt. He will get a good QB in the portal, I truly think. Elsewhere in the Big 12, Kansas might be, Jalen Daniels has played a lot of football across multiple years for Lance Leipold. Kansas probably goes after one. Cincinnati might have to now with Sorsby leaving, so hopefully Satterfield can pick up where he left off and get a decent QB in the portal. UCF and West Virginia, two that brought back former head coaches, the Scott Frost and Rich Rodriguez, both of them might have to get QBs. An interesting one, looking at Rich Rod at West Virginia, I think a guy to look at for him could be Jackson Arnold. He almost certainly leaves Auburn. He's not going to be a fit for the Alex Golish offense, but I think Jackson Arnold would fit for Rich Rod. Aiden Childs may also be a guy that would fit there, but I don't know that he'll want to play in that type of offense. He might want to throw more, but Jackson Arnold could be a good Rich Rod fit there. So there'll be ones to look at. We already talked about Oklahoma State, with Mestemaker, that they could be in play for him. So we'll see there. Iowa State is another one. Jimmy Rogers is the new head coach, but losing Rocco Becht, who played a lot of football for them, and we're not sure that he'll be back. So Iowa State may be in the mix for a portal QB as well. Houston will not. Wigman should be back after a good year for the Cougs. In the ACC, let's start at North Carolina. Gio Lopez did not work there last year, but he was good at South Alabama. I expect Gio Lopez will enter the portal and go somewhere decent and be a starter. People have forgotten about Lopez, but he was a good QB when he started at USA before. I expect he'll hit the portal again and be the guy there. Florida State, we don't know if Gus is going to be back at O coordinator. As of now, he still is on the job there. They're probably going to want a QB that can both run and throw and is a dual threat. Sorsby would be a decent one for them. We're hearing his name for a lot of the places that will want a dual threat guy. Will be interesting what Florida State ends up doing at that position. Clemson will also need a QB. We had heard Craig, mentioned for that job, as well as some other guys, who I talked about. Louisville with Jeff Brom, Dylan Raiola is one I had mentioned before. Cal, Sagapalutella is going to be back for Cal, it sounds like, which is a massive hold for Cal with Tosh Lupoy coming in and Nick Rolovich staying there in an assistant capacity. He'll be coaching the QBs next year. SMU looks like Kevin Jennings will be back again. They'll be a fun team. We don't know what Virginia Tech is going to do. Now with James Franklin, not sure if they'll be in the market for a QB or what the Hokies will do. If they are in the portal for a QB, I expect they will get a good one just because James Franklin has been on a tear so far. It would make a lot of sense. But we went through, a lot of the P4 teams, some of those G5 QBs. And please tune in to me next time. Our time's up now. But if you ever find me on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, I'm on YouTube, Spotify as well. Feel free to, down here though, you can find me at Huseman CFB, whether it be on this post or just on my page or DMs. Ask any questions you want about the portal, coaching carousel. If there's guys you're interested in, if you have other theories, topics you'd like me to cover in the next episode, feel free to throw them out there. Be glad to talk about and cover anything you want to, or specific teams, conferences you might want me to focus on. Anything to get you guys to watch, make you happy. I would love to do it. But thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you, and take care.